Okay, so let's get started. So now for the rest of today and probably the next week, we are not going to talk about the general problem of reinforcement learning, okay? So we are just going to focus on one of the many challenges in reinforcement learning, which is exploration versus exploitation. To do that, I'm going to introduce you to a slightly restricted or simple setup of learning, which is the idea of immediate reinforcement learning. Okay. So before I explain what is immediate oral, so let's look at the key characteristics of an oral problem, right? So in oral problem, like the first key characteristics is like you are learning to act in many situations, right? And you have delayed rewards and hence credit assignment, right? And you also have the exploration, exploitation dilemma. Okay, so as I mentioned before, this exploration exploitation dilemma is a unique aspect of reinforcement learning, which is worth studying by itself. Okay, now when we study about exploration versus exploitation, in order to avoid the other two challenges, okay, so we're going to take a really simple setting where there is no delayed reward, there is no requirement to act in many situations. Okay, so you're going to consider a problem where you are acting in only one situation all the time. So there is no first issue, and the rewards are immediate. There is no delayed reward and has no credit assignment issues. Okay, so then the problem purely becomes an exploration exploitation problem, right? So that is what we're going to see today. Now, before we do that, I want to discuss again a bit more on the type of feedback that we are receiving here, right? Like so there are two types of feedback one can think of. Okay, so the first type of feedback is the instructive feedback. Okay, which basically tells the agent what to do exactly. Okay, and the second type of feedback is the evaluative feedback. Okay, the evaluative feedback just evaluates the action. It doesn't tell what to do. Okay, now we are in this agent scenario, right? Like so where we have an agent which takes some observation and it makes some action. Okay. However, let us assume that there is an ideal action to take here. Okay, so like an optimal action to take here. We are going to call that optimal action as A start. Okay, so this is my optimal action. Okay, now if you are in a supervised learning setting, okay, let's take an example again. Okay, so let's say there are 4 possible actions: A1, A2, A3, and A4. Okay, and let us say, just for this cartoon example, like so the ideal action to take is A2. Okay, I give you a situation, I want you to take 1 out of 4 actions. Okay, and the ideal action to take here is A2. Now if you are in an instructive feedback, then the system will take an action randomly, okay, or through its prediction. Let's say the system takes A1. The instructive feedback would say this is a wrong answer and the right answer is A2. Like the right action is A2. Okay. However, the evaluative feedback will not give you any clue about the right action here. It will only say, okay, you took A1. A1 is not a good action to take here. Do you see the difference? So the evaluative feedback is in some sense completely dependent on your action. However, the instructive feedback is not dependent on your action at all. Like so, you could take A1 or A3 or A4. It doesn't matter for the instructor. Like so, the instructor is just going to say A2 is the right action. Okay. Now, this kind of instructive feedback is often used in supervised learning, and the evaluative feedback is used in reinforcement learning. Okay. Now, The evaluative feedback just tells us how good or bad an action is. It doesn't tell us what is the right action, right? Like, so now this idea of evaluative feedback itself is what studying by itself, okay? So there is this whole field on Bandit's literature, like where people for several decades have studied how to act efficiently when you have evaluative feedback, okay? So that is what the entire topic of immediate reinforcement learning is about. Okay. In the case of immediate RL, which is the simplest possible reinforcement learning setting, we are just going to study about exploration and exploitation without worrying about the other two challenges. Okay. Now, this is also known as, I think the textbook doesn't call this as immediate RL, like the textbook just calls this as K-armed bandit problem. Okay. So I'm going to describe what is this problem and why is it called a bandit problem. Like, so, like, imagine you have K arms to pull. Okay, so 1, 2, okay. Okay. Now, each time you pull one of these arms, you're going to get a reward. Your goal is to maximize your reward over a certain period of time. Okay. So, for example, I give you 1,000 actions. Like you can only take 1,000 actions. Now you can interact with this machine for 1,000 times. You get the maximum reward. Okay. Now this is kind of similar to the bandit missions that you would see in like casinos, right? Like so, like for example, like in bandit missions, like you pull a river. Sometimes you get money. Sometimes you don't get money, right? Like so, now these rewards could be considered as money. Like so, I let you play with this machine for 1,000 times. Whatever money you get, it's yours, right? Like so, now your goal is obviously to get maximum possible money, right? Like so, like you don't want to explore too much. Like you want to quickly figure out what is the right lever to pull and just keep pulling that lever, right? Like so, for example, if I give you only 1,000 actions, you figure out what is the optimal action after 800 steps, right? Like so, you have really lost a lot of money, right? So now. So that is the problem. Okay, so now this is just a K version, K-armed version of K. There are K bandits instead of like 2, so that's why it's called, instead of 1, that's why it's called K-armed bandits. Okay, now in this case you have a bunch of K options or actions, you can call it whatever way, and each action is going to give you some reward, a numerical reward, okay, which is kind of chosen from some stationary probability distribution. Okay, that depends on your action. Okay, if this is not probabilistic, then there is an optimal algorithm to do. What is that? Suppose the rewards are deterministic. Okay, so yeah.
You try every action one time and you always choose the best one.
Yes. So if the rewards are deterministic, then you just the best algorithm is to try every arm once. Let's say there are K arms, you try K times. Then for 1,000 minus K times, like you just pick the best arm, right? The problem becomes much simpler and trivial, like if the rewards are deterministic. But what makes it more challenging is the rewards are probabilistic. So there is a probability distribution, which means you have to estimate these probability distribution of the rewards for each arm and pick the one with maximum expected reward. Okay. Now we also have an additional constraint, which is that the probability distribution is stationary. Like because if the distribution is changing over time, you cannot learn it easily, right? Like so, like for example, like for the first 100 trials, let's say 5th arm is the best arm. Suddenly there is an adversary in the back, like maybe the owner of the bandit machine, who changes this such that like 10th arm is the best arm now, right? Like so now you did not figure it out. Like so initially you thought 5th is the best. You're just going to keep trying 5th. However, in reality, there might be another arm which could have given you more money, right? So we are going to assume that we have a couple of things here. Like one is, like we're going to assume that the rewards are coming from some probability distribution which depends on your action, and this probability distribution is stationary. Okay, we will remove the stationary stationary observation very soon, like assumption very soon. Okay, what is the objective here? The objective here is to maximize the expected total reward over some time period. Okay, I want to highlight this objective. The objective is not to just find the best arm. Okay, if that is the case, then the best thing to do is just explore. Right? The objective is not just to find the best arm. The objective is to find the best arm as quickly as possible so that you can exploit it for the rest of the time and get maximum rewards. Okay, so now that is what makes this problem more challenging and interesting. So now a quick note here. So why is this immediate RL, or why is this the simplest setting? Because first of all, the agent sees the same state again and again. Right? So basically it's just, there is no observation here. There are just K actions to do. So it is basically same set of actions all the time. Okay. So the first challenge of RL doesn't exist. Now the second note here is that the rewards are immediate. You take an action and you get the reward right there, right? Like, so there's no delayed reward. Okay. So this is why this is like a very nice setting to just study exploration exploitation. Okay. Now, before we proceed with this, right? Like, so like, what are the applications of such a bandit setting, right? Like, is it just a pure like scientific problem where we want to understand exploration exploitation, or like are there any practical applications, right? Like, so there are actually several practical applications where this could be useful. Okay, so I think one of the applications that I listed in the notes is the idea of A/B testing. Okay, so now imagine like you are a website, you're a company which owns the website, like where you want to decide where to put buy it now button. Okay, so you want to put a button, buy it now. And the design team is arguing whether they should put it in the bottom of the page or in the top of the page. Okay. Now, in a classical A/B testing method, what they would do is they will create 2 copies of the website, ask 10,000 users to try the first one, 10,000 users to try the second one. They will just record how many times people bought the item in both these websites. And based on some statistics, they're going to say, oh, people actually buy, there's more chance of people buying if it is in the bottom or the top. Okay. Now, this solution doesn't include a lot of interaction. Like, it doesn't, well, there is some interaction with the users, but it's not as online as it can be, right? Like, so for example, imagine you're rolling out this A/B testing. Day 1 and day 2, you see clear difference between top and bottom. People always buy it if it is in the top. Okay. Now, do you really need to complete the entire experiment to decide like what, like, let's say you have gone through 1,000 people and they all, like 1,000 people in both the sides, and like majority of the people buy it when it is like in the top. Okay. So now, do you need to continue this experiment to all the 10,000 people, or you can change your mind right now, right? Like, so in the classical A/B testing, you don't interfere with the process. It happens completely. Okay. It's not adaptive over the course of time. Okay. However, I can set up this as a bandit problem. Now, how would I set this up a bandit problem? Like, so, like the actions, there are 2 actions here. Put it in the top or put it in the bottom, right? Now, every time there is a new user entering the website, I'm going to pick one of these 2 actions, okay, by using my bandit algorithm, and I will show either top or bottom. Okay. Now, if the user buys it, the reward is +1. If the user doesn't buy it, the reward is -1. Now, I have already learned something from just one user interaction. Now, when the second user comes, my decision to put whether it is in the top or on the bottom is going to be conditioned on whatever I have learned from the first user. When the 101st user comes, my decision to put it in the top or bottom is based on the first 100 users. Okay. So now the big advantage here is like every feedback is utilized right then and there before the next interaction with the users, right? Also, this is a nice setup because I don't need to stop A/B testing ever now, right? Like, so I can always do this throughout the whole lifetime of the website, right? Like, so I don't need to make a choice like of whether it is going to be in the top or bottom. Like, so for example, every once in a while, I could explore and put it in the bottom, even though people like it in the top, because maybe suddenly people started liking things in the bottom, right? Like so like this kind of banded setting lets you continue forever while the A/B testing is like for a limited period of time. And there are also other applications which are not listed in the notes. Question?
The people suddenly started lacking things in the bottom, and isn't the stationary assumption valid?
Yes. So then you don't have the stationary assumption anymore. So, but stationarity is a very strong assumption. Okay. So our goal is, I introduced the problem setting with stationarity, but we are going to like remove that assumption very soon. So often the real world is non-stationary, highly non-stationary, right? Like, so if you make stationarity assumption, like probably it's not going to be useful. Okay. So there is another application that I could think of, like which is more on the lines of clinical trials. Okay, let's say there are two types of treatments to handle a disease. Now the doctor has to decide which treatment to pick for a patient. Okay. Now in a typical clinical trial, people do things like A/B testing, like where you have two group of population, like control populations, one getting like a treatment A, one getting treatment B, and you pick the one which has most results, right? Like so now it has its advantage and disadvantage. Like the disadvantage here is you are testing one of the inefficient method with 10,000 patients, right? Like so you don't want to do that. Like so you want to make sure that you don't use the inefficient test as much as possible, right? Like so now if you go through the banded formulation of this clinical trial, then over a period of 2 or 3 months, every time there is a new patient, you decide which test to do based on the banded suggestion. And as time progresses, maybe in a month, banded would have figured out what is the most efficient test, and you would have saved a lot of inefficient treatments. Okay, so these are some examples for banded problem. Okay, so any questions? Any questions in Zoom? So Soma, I'm going to ask you to unmute. I don't know when you raised your hand, but I'm going to ask you to unmute. Like, do you have a question?
No. It was when the screen got blurred for a very short time. So
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. People, if screen gets blurred, just post it in the chat so that I know. Sometimes I don't see the screen. And also, please lower your hands if you don't have questions. Okay. So this is good. I have introduced you the problem, right? So now let us think about some solutions for this problem. Okay. Before that, well, I wanted to show you an interactive demo of Bandit, which one of my students developed, but I did not bring the link today. I don't know the link. So I'm going to give the link to you to play the Bandit game by yourself, like through email. But maybe we can just play it right here, like with me simulating the environment. Okay. So let's say there are 3 actions to do. Okay. Now, I'm going to ask you to choose one of these actions. Okay. But before that, give me a minute. Let me figure out what the reward distributions are going to be. Okay. So I'm going to ask you guys to pick up an arm. I'm going to reveal the reward. Okay. So over few interactions, let's see if we reach the arm that is the best arm that I have in my mind. Okay. So why don't we start with you? So which arm do you want to pick? The first one. Okay. So she picks the first arm and it gives you a +1. Okay. So you? Which one? 3. Number 3. So let's say number 3 gives you a 0. Yeah. The first one again, and the first one gives you, let's say, plus 0.5. Yep. Second one. So let us say the second one gives you plus 0.5. Okay. Anyone else? Yep.
Second one.
You want to pick the second one again. So the second one gives you 0.1.
question?
What?
A question?
First one?
No, I'm asking a
Oh, question. Okay.
Do you know the range of the reward?
No. You don't know anything about the rewards. Anyone else? Yep.
How many time steps are there? Infinite?
It will stop when I say stop. So, yep.
First one.
Sorry. First one. Okay. So first one gives you +1. Yep.
Second one.
Okay. Second one gives you 0.7.
Third one.
Okay. So third one gives you a +10. Sorry. Third one again. So third one gives you a 0. Yep. Second one, it gives you 0.3. So it's 0.3. Yep. Third one again. So well, it gives you a +10. So should we stop here? Have you figured out what is the most optimal arm to pick?
Third one.
So how many of you think it is third one? Okay, a lot of you think it is third one. Okay, I think it's right. Okay, so in this case, you can see that you see actually several aspects of the problem here. Okay, so the first thing is, first time you picked third one, it gave you a 0, while the other two actions gave you some positive values, right? Like, so if you make up your mind very quick and say, oh, okay, third one is not good, then probably you're going to miss out the optimal action, right? And the other thing that I would like to highlight here is, like, depending on your nature, like in terms of the risk aversiveness, or like what kind of, like how short, like myopic or like long-term thinking you have, you'll pick different of these arms, right? So for example, third one seems to be a bit riskier in the sense it gives you zeros, but once in a while it gives you a very high reward. So probably picking 10 times third one is better than picking the second one 10 times, because the second one always gives you something less than 1, right? Like, so you pick it 10 times, you're going to get a small number, but you pick the third one 10 times, even if you get less than 2 times, it's 20, right? So now, how do we formalize what we have done here as an algorithm, right? So whatever we did today is like one way to solve this problem. There are many ways to solve this problem. Okay, so we are going to look at several of those solutions over the lecture. Okay, so first let's try to formalize the problem. Okay, so now each of these actions have some expected reward, right? So what you guys were mentally doing, like when we were playing this game, was like you were trying to estimate like how valuable are these actions, right? Like, so if you think some action is more valuable, you tend to pick that more. If you think some action is less valuable, then you tend to pick that less. Okay, but remember, once in a while you have to pick those less valuable actions so that you can explore, right? So we are going to formalize this notion, which is the value of an action. Okay, so value of action, let's say A, we are going to define that as Q star of A. Okay, I put a star here because that is the optimal value. Okay, we don't know this. Behind the scenes, the bandit machine knows the actual value of an action, which is the expected return or reward from that probability distribution, right? So now this is basically expected reward given that you pick that action in time step t. Okay, you pick action A in time step t, then you get some reward. Now, what is the expected reward? That is the value of the action. Yes.
So if you don't put a star, it is the actual value.
Okay, we will come to that. So, like, now this is the optimal or the real true action value, right? Like, of course, we don't have access to this true action value. So what we have access to is just our mental estimate. Like, for example, like we could estimate based on the samples that the average reward that you would get here is whatever is 2.5 by 3, right? This is the average reward for this. So that is your estimate of Q star of A. Okay, we are going to call your estimate of Q star of A at time t as QT of A. capital QT, okay? Now this means that at time step t, this is my estimate of the actual action value. Similarly here, I think the estimate is 20 by 4, which is 5. So QT of 3 is equal to 5. Okay, now there are two entities here. Okay, so one is Q star of A, which is the actual action value, and you have QT of A, which is the estimate. This is estimate and this is actual. Okay, now let us say you have access to the actual Q star. Now can you tell me how would you act? I give you access to the original Q star of all the actions. How would you act? How would you use that information? Yep.
Well, you take the action that gives you the most, the highest Q.
Yeah, so the highest, whatever action which has the highest action value, right? So if you have access to Q star of A, we don't need to worry about the problem. The solution is simple. The solution is basically A star, which is the optimal action to take, which is argmax Q star of A, where A belongs to A1 to AK. Out of all the K actions, whatever has the maximum Q star value, that is my ideal action, okay? And I know this. So if you give me 1,000 chances of interaction, I'll pick A star, A star, A star, A star 1,000 times, right? So that is the best possible situation. Of course, we cannot be there because we don't have access to Q star. So what we really have access to is QT of A, right? So now, which means that we have to take our actions based on our QT of A, right? Like so the action AT that you are going to take, okay, is going to be something like this. Argmax of QT of A, where A belongs to A1 to AK. Okay, now just 1 second. So now this action need not be the optimal action, right? Because unless your QT of A, your estimate is accurate, like exactly same as Q star A, then there is no guarantee that this is the optimal action. So you have to be careful when we are doing this thing. Okay, you should know that what you're taking is not an optimal action, which means you have to explore. Question?
At first, how do we find the QT?
We are going to talk about it. So we are going to talk about how to estimate QT. But the simple thing that I have already done here is just average, right? So average is the QT. Okay, and this average is going to get better and better as we see more examples. We are going to talk about it. Okay, so one thing that I want to highlight here again and again is our goal is not just to find the optimal action A star, but to find it as quick as possible, right? Now, this idea that you have to find your best action as quick as possible. So there is a mathematical way of describing it, like which is the notion of regret. Okay. Now, what is regret? Well, as the name suggests, like it is the regret of the agent, okay, that he did not know the optimal action from the beginning. Okay. Now, here's the thing: if you, let's say this is the time, this is the percentage of times you took optimal action. Okay. Now, the maximum is 100%. You always take optimal action. Okay. Now, if you know, if you have access to Q star of A, then you would always take Q star of A, right? So you will just have a straight line here. So this is the ideal scenario. Okay. However, in reality, we don't have access to Q star of A, which means you have to make some estimates, and your estimates might be wrong, and your estimates get better and better over time with experience and interaction. And eventually you will reach the ideal action, right? Now, how much time does it take for this, right? Like, so now let me change the color. So let's say this is a learning agent. This is an RL agent, which slowly learns which is the optimal action, and eventually it takes the optimal action. Once it figures out the optimal action, it's going to use it forever. Okay. Now, this is an example RL agent, right? Now, you can see that this agent, for this much time, right, has taken suboptimal actions. Now, had I taken the optimal action from the beginning, I would not have lost all these rewards. Sometimes rewards could be money, right? Like so now, so this is my regret. Okay. Now this is what we are going to call as regret. So if I have to write regret in a mathematical way, regret is if you know the actual action, you will just pick that k times, right? So let's say the time period is k. You pick the same action q star of a k times, right? Like so you are going to get that much amount of money or reward. So k times q star of a star, k times q star of a star. Okay. However, in reality, you don't know it. So you're going to take some actions which are going to give you some rewards. So summation over t is equal to 1 to k rt. This is the actual reward that you got. Okay. Now, the amount of reward that you missed because of this learning process, right? So that is your regret. Ideally, we are looking for algorithms with least regret. Okay. So for example, let's say this is oral agent 1. Okay. And let's say I have another oral agent which has this curve. This is oral agent 2. Okay. Now, which agent should we pick if you have to pick one out of the two? The second one, obviously, right? Like because the second one figures out the optimal action faster. It has lesser regret than the first one, right? Like so now, so that is our goal. Our goal is to design algorithms with least regret as possible. Okay. Keeping this in mind, now we are going to see like a few algorithms to solve this bandit problem. Okay. So I don't know if I have enough time to cover more than one, but I guess I can cover at least one. So we're going to look at action value methods. Okay, somebody asked me, how do I estimate QT, right? So the simplest way to do that is by just doing sample averages. Like how many times did you pick an action and how much reward did you get, right? Like so you take an average of that, right? Like so basically QT of A is equal to sum of rewards when A was taken, okay, prior to time t. All the rewards that you have taken, like got so far, like you sum them, divided by number of times A was taken prior to time t. Okay, I can write it mathematically. So it's basically summation over I is equal to 1 to t minus 1 for all the previous time steps. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to sum the reward, but I'm going to sum only the rewards when I took that particular action. So we are going to add an indicator function. Okay, so this indicator function, right? So this 1 of ai is equal to a. So this indicator function is equal to 1 if action A was taken in time step I. It's going to be 0 otherwise. Okay. This divided by the number of times you have taken this action. So the number of times you have taken this action is simply summation I is equal to 1 to t minus 1, the indicator function. Because the indicator function is anyway counting, right? It's a counting function. It counts, it's 1 whenever the action was taken, 0 whenever it was not taken. So this will give you a practical estimate of the QT. Okay. Now there are a couple of notes here. First of all, let's say you have never taken an action yet. The denominator is 0, right? So anything by 0 is infinity. It looks like it is a. So now by definition, this is going to be the most probable action that you should take. Okay. But in this cases, like whenever the denominator is 0, like you will just resolve, like there are many ways to resolve this. The simplest way is just to treat the whole action value as 0. Or you could just say that is the maximizing action, that you just need to take it at least once. Okay. So the first thing. The second thing is, as the time t goes to infinity, okay, you keep interacting with the bandit again and again and again. Okay. These averages, the QT of A, right? So by law of large numbers, they are going to converge to Q star of A. So as time goes to infinity, okay, QT of A is going to converge to Q star of A. Is that clear? Okay. So now we know how to estimate. At every time step, we are just going to update. Like time step 1, I take action 1, I get some value, I estimate Qt of 1. Right? Time step 2, I take action 2, I update the Qt of 2 and so on. Now, how am I going to use this Qt, right? Like so now, as I mentioned before, if you have access to this estimates, then the best thing to do is AT is equal to argmax of A, Qt of A, right? Now, this idea of picking the best action based on your estimate just means that you are exploiting whatever your knowledge is, right? Your knowledge says that this is the Q value. It might be true, it might not be true. And you're just going to follow the knowledge and you're going to exploit. Okay. Now, we know that just exploiting is a bad idea. Now, how can I modify this setup so that I explore also? So any ideas? Yep.
You can take an action that is not greedy some of the time.
Okay. Okay. So in some sense, this is a greedy action, right? So this is a greedy action because I'm too greedy to get the maximum reward. And I know that at least for now, this is the action giving me the maximum reward. I'm going to take it. So the suggestion is like once in a while, take a non-greedy action, right? Now this simple suggestion is actually one of the most widely used technique. Okay, so it is very difficult to beat this very simple algorithm, which is basically always take greedy action, but once in a while take a non-greedy action. Okay, so we're going to formalize it even a little bit more. So we are going to consider some probability epsilon. Okay, so this probability is very small. It could be 0.1 or it could be 0.01, 0.05, whatever. Okay, now at every time step. Okay, so I don't know where I have it written. Maybe I don't have it written. Okay, at every time step, I'm going to consider this argmax thing. Okay, so my action AT is going to be argmax of A, Qt of A. Okay, for 1 minus epsilon probability, and it is going to be a random action for epsilon probability. Okay, so so do you see the setup? Can you implement this algorithm, which is what we are going to do in the first assignment? Okay, so this is a very simple algorithm. It basically says that at every time step you sample this event from epsilon probability. With probability epsilon, you are going to pick a random action. With probability 1 minus epsilon, you are going to pick an argmax action or a greedy action. Sometimes there could be two actions which has same greedy value. Okay, in which case you have to break the ties randomly. Okay, so just make sure you break the ties. Like you don't pick always the first of the two. Okay, so now this algorithm. Okay, so one thing I want to highlight is, at least for this edition of the course, like I would not do a lot of proofs. Okay, so we will try to keep it as practical and intuitive as possible, but we will discuss some of the convergences of these algorithms. Okay, so I can actually prove that this algorithm converges to Q star in limit. We're not going to do that in the class, but instead I'll give you intuition. Okay, so why should this algorithm converge? This algorithm, we're going to call this algorithm has a name, so this is called epsilon greedy. Okay, now this epsilon greedy algorithm converges to Q star of A. So the argument is this. So if I give you infinite time, you will eventually pick all the actions enough number of times, because you're always picking some random action, right? So when t goes to infinity, you would have picked all the actions infinite number of times. So your Qt converges to Q star. Okay. A very simple proof. Question?
Does the epsilon changes as we go over time?
Okay, that is a good question. So that leads to a slightly more complicated algorithm. So the question for people in Zoom is, does epsilon change over time? You can change epsilon over time, but then then you need to make sure that things converge. Okay, but then I will also we don't have time to talk about non-stationarity today, but in the next week's lecture we will talk about the power of this epsilon greedy algorithm in non-stationary settings. I can give you a teaser now. So imagine you do this epsilon greedy, somehow you figure out what is the best arm, then you stop doing epsilon, or as he said, reduce the value of epsilon over time and eventually it reaches 0. Okay, now that would work only if the world is stationary. If the world is non-stationary, then the probability distributions of the actions are changing, which means you should constantly explore, right? So the beauty of epsilon greedy is it's a constant exploration algorithm. Throughout the period, you're constantly exploring a bit. So there are advantages and disadvantages of the method that you proposed. Okay, so now, well, before we conclude, I just want to show you some practical experiments. So now let's test this epsilon greedy algorithm. Okay, I'm going to test this with 10-armed test bed. Okay, so here is the 10-armed test bed that we have. So in this case, you have 10 different arms. Okay, so the way in which I have set up this problem is there is a probability distribution for each arm, which is basically this Q star 1. Maybe I'll change the color. Q star 1, Q star 2, and so on. I'm going to sample a value from a Gaussian distribution with mean 0 and variance 1. Okay, so that is my Q star of, that is going to be the mean of Q star of 1. Okay, so now this is the mean for this. This is the mean for this. Now, if it is deterministic, it's an easy problem, right? I have to make it stochastic. So I'm going to set up a Gaussian with that mean. So with this particular mean, I have a Gaussian with variance of 1. Okay, so this is how I set up the problem in the back. In practical applications, you don't know how this is done. So this is just a simulation. Okay, now let us see how epsilon greedy works in figuring out the optimal action. Okay, so here are some results. So here you can see. So you have only chance to interact with this bandit machine 1,000 times. Okay, so in 1,000 times you have to figure out the optimal action. Now these results are averaged over 2,000 different configurations of the bandit. So this is not just one bandit. Okay, 2,000 different problems. This is the average result, and you can see that there is epsilon is equal to 0, which means you just exploit, and there is epsilon with 0.01, which means just 1% of the time you explore. And there is another algorithm where you explore 10% of the time. Okay, now you can see that epsilon is equal to 0.1 is doing better, right? And clearly epsilon is equal to 0 got stuck in an in a suboptimal action. It never came out of it, right? Which is kind of evident from the bottom graph. So here you see the percentage of optimal action, and you can see that epsilon is equal to 0. The greedy algorithm was taking the optimal action only 1/3 of the time. Okay. However, the other algorithms are taking more optimal actions. Now, a quick question. So can someone tell me what is the maximum percentage of optimal action that epsilon is equal to 0.1 algorithm will reach?
91.
91%. That's right, right? So because epsilon is equal to 0.1 means 10% of the time you explore. Now, when you're exploring 10% of the time, you're taking all the actions, which means you will also take the optimal action once in a while, exactly 10% of the time, right? So it's 91% optimal. So there's a cost that you're paying here, right? So if you commit to the optimal action, maybe you will reach 100% optimality. But that is useful in stationary problems. In non-stationary problems, it hurts you, right? So now it is important that you know what kind of problem you're dealing with. If you're dealing with non-stationary problem, you should not cut the epsilon. If you're dealing with stationary problem, probably at some point you could cut the epsilon. Okay, so probably we will stop here. So we are going to see more algorithms to solve this bandit problem in the next week. Chapter 2 notes are not complete yet. So I still have to add some more. So probably I'll update it over the weekend. So then we will cover them in the next week, and then we'll move to the full reinforcement learning problem. I will stop here. Any questions?